This is the IOA Podcast, a space for truth, tenderness, and becoming whole, one breath at a time. Welcome back, resilient ones, to the IOA Podcast. I am Dr. Malika, and I am your host. And I am super excited to be back with you for episode 11. So, we took a little bit of a break, and it was for a great reason. So, during that time, we were allowing the listeners on WDJY 99.1 FM in the city of Atlanta, Georgia, to catch up with where we have been. So they came on board in November. As you know, we had already been doing this since about September of 2025. So we were already well ahead into what we were doing, and we wanted to give them the opportunity to catch up with where we were. So they were doubling up episodes each week. So they would get 2 episodes at a time. And they finally have caught up. And so we are back with brand new episodes. And in that time, we did do a bonus episode on Voices of Resilience, where I had my younger sister, Cara Janae, come in and we answered questions about resilience. And so that is going to be something that we are going to be doing regularly throughout the show. You will be getting bonus material like that that will be beneficial to what we have going on. So, I wanted to open up this particular episode where the title is The Table: Food, Family, and Generational Healing. Food, family, and generational healing. And if we're being honest, talking about just the table and the significance of it, I think that it's perfect timing that we are having this episode come out during the holiday season, because we are going to be talking about how important our family, the food we eat, the traditions that come with it, and the table that we sit at are to our life. So I kind of want to just do a walk back of the season. So far this season, we have been walking through things like the elements and the symbols that shape our healing journey. So remember, we talked about our roots, we talked about the soil, we talked about the fire, we've talked about the water, we've talked about the circle, and we've talked about the rhythm. Today's episode, we are moving to a place that many of us know very well, whether we loved it or we hated it, the table. And so that dining table, that folding table in the fellowship halls of our churches, the coffee table in front of the TV in your living room, the bar stool in the kitchen, the plate in your lap because there was not enough chairs. That table is symbolic of where you might have laughed until you cried. It may be the place where you learned to be quiet so that you would not be the one that would be talked about after you left. For many of us, the table has a variety of memories. And so some of them are warm, some of them are complicated, and some of us have both. I really want us to go into understanding what that is in further depth in this particular episode. So, before we go any further, I want you to take a moment to just notice what is happening in your body when you hear the word table. Is there a little tightening in your chest? Is there a smile at the corner of your mouth? Do you feel yourself bracing and tensing up? Do you feel yourself longing for sitting in that space? Whatever it is that you are feeling, bring it here. All of it is welcome. So before we go any further, I want to ground us. Let's take a breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. Let's do it again. In through the nose, out through the mouth. So I want you to know that there are no ground rules for this particular episode. You're allowed to bring your entire being, your entire story to this conversation, whether it's joy, whether it's grief, whether it's awkwardness, whether it's the things that you suppress. All of those things are allowed to come to this table as we have this conversation. We are going to take a very quick break. And when we come back, we are really going to get into our first segment, understanding the table as the story. Be back in just a second. Welcome back, everyone, to episode number 11. And again, we are talking about the table. When I think about the table, I think about my story and my upbringing, the different experiences I had when I was younger. So many of us grew up in homes or churches where the table was this unofficial classroom. And we learned not only about our family's belief systems or our family history, but we did it similar to what we did in the Sunday school classroom or in the school classrooms that we attended. When I think about the table for me, it was the place that I did my homework. And me being me, I'm a nerd. And so I do admit to being that. But it was the space that I remember sitting down to not only do the work, but to also learn who I was, to learn about the world, to learn about my history as a family, to learn about the history of my people and all the different things that I was absorbing. And so it was the place that we went to. It could have been for actual dinner with our families. It could have been the table that we went to after we had church and they had dinner. So just think about all the different foods that you had. Now, I will say, for me right now, I am pescatarian, so I do not eat chicken and beef and all the other things, poultry. But I do remember a time when I did eat these things. And so I remember where fried chicken was a staple after service if you ate at the church. I also remember how we had macaroni and cheese and all the different things that were our staples of our childhood and things that we enjoyed and we loved. And so maybe the table for you is nostalgic because it reminds you of those after church dinners that you had where you got to run around and play with your friends at church. Maybe it was the time that you got together where you knew you would be with your parents, you would be with your siblings, and you had the ability to sit down and recount your day. It may also be the time where people brought in desserts and all the different things that you may not get regularly, but you remember the treat that came with sitting at the table. The table was a place that was important. The table was a place that was a staple. It was important not only to us gathering together, but it also set the foundation for who we were as a unit, as a community. Think about your table. Was your table loud? Was there a lot of talking because there was a lot of people? Was there storytelling? Was there recounting what happened during the holiday season? Was it that cousin rivalry that happens? Was it the shading each other? What is the laughter? What was happening? Or your table may have been quiet, where one person was speaking, the other people listened. All of these different things are dependent on the structure that existed for your table. And so there's no one way to look at it, but there are certain things that we probably can consistently say we learned at the table. And I just want to lay out what some of those were. We remember things like who got to eat first, who was last to eat. So if you were one of the younger ones, you knew that you were going to have to wait to get your food. If you were, one of the older ones, you knew you were going to do it. We knew who got served their food and we knew who had to get up and serve themselves. We knew which food was good, right? We judged it based on who made it, who was going to be there, what it was, and what they were known for. We also knew whether or not how we felt, the feelings we were allowed to feel were welcome in those spaces and how they would be handled in those spaces. And if you are part of the African diaspora, and remember, this podcast is really my love letter to my culture, to my people, the table held our culture. It is the place that we went to that even if it wasn't a formal sharing of culture, it was where it was personified the most. So part of the culture talks about the spices, the smells, certain dishes that You didn't even have to know were cooking or see them cooking to know that they were going to be there. You could just smell it, right? You walk in the door and you already know that someone made a particular thing because, again, there's culture, there's memory that is housed at that table. The other thing that the table carries for us is our migrations. If you think about your grandmother's recipes, if you think about the things that you make during the holidays, certain dishes, it came from that time when our people had to stretch a little bit into a lot. And so I think about at this time of year, certain dishes that we typically only eat during this time of the year. My father was known for making his gumbo. And so I often talk about that. He made it for New Year's, which again is like the culmination of the holiday season. We knew we would have that at that time, right? We knew it would be made that day. I'm a person, my siblings don't necessarily share in this, but I'm a person that loves black eyed peas. And so I know that for New Year's or going into New Year's, I am going to eat black eyed peas. I also know that it's the one time of year I'm going to eat greens, right? I'm probably going to have some maybe for Thanksgiving. If we have the same type of food for Christmas, we will have it for Christmas. And I know for sure I will have it for New Year's. All of this is directly connected to the table. And while we were making little into a lot and stretching the little we had access to historically, some of the things we have to think about for a moment is what did you learn at that table besides what you ate? What did you learn about love? How did you learn how to display that and share that? What did you learn at the table about yourself, your body, your worth, whether you were enough? What did you learn about gender? What did you learn about how to serve? What did you learn about who gets to rest and when? Also, you may realize as you're asking yourself these questions, that table held more than food. That table took you through the beginning and it will take you through your entire life. And it also taught you the foundational lessons that many of us carry at this part of our life. I want us to take another break. And I do want us to come back and dig deeper into some of these questions that I just asked you at the end of this segment, because again, not just the food, we're going to get into talking about some of the trauma and the generational patterns that are connected to the table. We will be back in just a second. Welcome back. And we are talking about the table. In the last segment, one of the things I asked you at the end was recounting some of the things that you learned. We cannot talk about the table in our community without talking about trauma and survival. So many of us grew up hearing certain things. And I'll just give you some examples. May not be exact, but some of you will be like, yeah, this is reminiscent of what I experienced. And things like you better finish your plate, everything that's on your plate, because food is expensive. There are people starving in the world. I can't tell you how many times I have heard that said to me when I was a child. And I probably said the same thing to my children when they got to a certain age to remind them that they were blessed to be in the position that they were in. What about, we don't waste food in this house, right? Tags into what I just said before, but that might be a different variation of what you heard. Here's my favorite, right? There are children starving somewhere, and it's always, again, putting into perspective for you that there are people that are not in and as fortunate of a position as you are. And so that's one of those things that you may see come to play in that conversation at the table. And so one of the things I want you to highlight in your mind when you listen to these statements is that they came from real experiences of scarcity. And from a cultural standpoint, many of our grandparents and our parents lived through things like poverty, displacement, not knowing where the next meal would come. And because of that, food was not only proof that you were loved, it also was like, yes, the lights are on. I have a roof over my head. Basically, it's saying we have made it compared to where we were before. But when you're a child, you don't understand this because that is not your lived experience. Some of us may have had those issues of scarcity. For a lot of us, we were in a better position than what our parents and our grandparents were. So we weren't touched by those lived experiences. So if you were a child and you didn't want to eat, it's not always because you were being picky. It was not because you were disrespecting the struggle of those who came before you. It may have been just simply, I'm not hungry in this moment, but you weren't given the space to be able to do that. At the same time, as we're talking about the food, here are some of the other things or other messages that were being delivered to you at that table. You were ignoring your own body and what your body was telling you to do. You learned to override when you were full. So the body is giving you cues. You were learning to override that. You learned that cleaning your plate mattered more than listening to what your body was saying. You also learned that your emotions were not welcome, but overeating or undereating was allowed in order to do what was being asked of you, where you really didn't have a say so in the matter. And so I want to connect this to something for you because many of us probably don't understand where this comes from, but we have to look at the fact that if you add into the equation the diet culture, especially in the United States, you will have comments about who gained weight, about who should not be eating what, about what it means to have a summer body, about whose body is getting thick, who snapped back after a baby, right? All the different things that we talk about in relationship to our body. If you are a girl or a woman, this is problematic because this is where it starts to shape the messages about how you feel about your body and how valuable it is to you. And so a lot of times our bodies were quietly being policed, and sometimes they were not so quietly being policed. So the table was not just a side of the food. It was a place where it was giving you messages that you would internalize about how to deal with and view your body. So it's been a site of labor, right? It's a place with who cooked, who cleaned, who did all the things. It's a site of where women were carrying the weight of how they felt about their bodies. But they also carried the weight of feeding everyone and making sure that everyone was okay, taking on those burdens. So when I say to you that we are going to talk about reclaiming the table, we're not talking about learning the recipes. We're not talking about reclaiming this space just for the sake of reclaiming it. What we are talking about is we are interrupting gently the patterns that were there that were established at that table. Those scarcity scripts that were put into our minds, we're battling those shame scripts that were written for us and put in our minds, we're battling and we're rejecting those. The belief that suffering in that space is part of being good in any kind of capacity. We are going to reject those things and go forward in a way that's healthy. If I'm touching on something for you, I want you to remind you that you didn't choose the script that you were handed. You did, however, survive them. And now, as an adult, we get to decide which one of these scripts we are going to keep and which ones we are going to put down. And so that is what I want you to hold at your core and take from this segment. And this episode in general, I want you to take that away as a lesson. We are going to take another break, and then we're going to come back and talk about how we can reframe and reclaim the table in a way that's healthy and healing. Be back in just a second. Welcome back to the episode, and we are going to look at ways to reclaim the table as medicine. reclaiming the table as medicine. This is really important because we've talked about the different ways that the table has been the site of the injury, that the table has been the site of the affliction. And we want to talk about ways that we can reclaim this space and make it a space that's medicinal to all of us. Maybe for you right now, the table is not the traditional place that it has been in the past. And the reason why I say that is because for many of us, we've gotten away from the traditional family sits down at the table at the end of the day because we have all these different schedules. We have parents that are working a variety of schedules. You have the children that are in a variety of activities and different things. And so sometimes we are not in the position where we have the ability to sit down traditionally so it looks different. But no matter what it means, even if it's just around the holidays or special occasions, that table has delivered messages, and we want to counteract and heal the spaces that have been wounded. So we've often looked at food in our culture ancestrally as a medicine. It was the things that we ate, the soups, the teas, the stews, the different things that we consumed. We did so oftentimes thinking about how they could heal our bodies, how they can make us healthy and whole. These are the things that we shared. So even when our food got twisted to become oppressive, right? Making do with leftovers and scraps and still trying to make a way out of no way, right? We still hold stories that show our resilience as a people. So we're claiming the table could look a lot of ways, but here's some ways we could look at it. To give it a more healthy, positive, and uplifting effect, we can bring back an old recipe, but make it in a different way with more care, thinking about your body and your health. So maybe making greens with pork or something that may not necessarily be beneficial to your body physically, we can tweak the recipe and maybe we're using smoked turkey instead of using the pork, right? Still finding ways to bring back an old recipe, but we're tweaking it that it's healthy for the body. Maybe we can create a new ritual, right? So when you're at the table, everyone is sharing one thing that they're grateful for, not just the food, but in their life. And the reason why you're trying to do this is you're giving the table a different connotation. It's no longer restrictive. It's no longer you have to be silent. It's no longer making you feel as if you can't be or can't do, but it's focusing on the things that are positive and uplifting. And now you're giving the table a different connotation. Also, you may put in place some rules, deciding that at your table, there are certain things you just will no longer do. We will not talk negatively about people's bodies. We will not talk negatively about people's weight. We will talk about how we feel, what we're experiencing, what we're going through, what we're carrying, and not just about how we look. So now we counteract those messages that have made us feel self conscious in different ways about our appearance and about our health and about our bodies. It may also be that you need to recognize that your table is not just the traditional family, quote unquote, right? That it's not just about blood, that it can be the family that you create. And I had this conversation with a client during a session, asking them to reframe what they believe family looks like. Because again, they came from a background where there was adoption and then connecting with bio family and things not going the way expected. Now we need to reframe our position on family. So maybe you need to do that in relationship to the table. If you're estranged from your family, if you're grieving a loved one, or you don't have a big table in your life or a space where people come together, maybe you need to look at choosing a family and understanding that chosen family is a real thing. Maybe it's a solo meal, maybe feeling comfortable with your own company and understanding that you are valuable and that your company is also precious. It could be FaceTiming while you're eating, right? We have technology. There are ways that we can connect with people and make the process and the ritual different for you in that space. So we are not measuring it by what society says it should be. We are not measuring it by what they say is normal, because again, normal doesn't really exist. There are patterns of behavior that are consistent across people. So Law of averages and statistics just show more people do this. But that doesn't mean your way is less normal than the other person, right? So, this is the question that I want you to ask as we go out of this segment. I want you to ask, how can I bring more kindness, more honesty, and more presence to the way I sit at the table? And whatever that looks like for you right now, how can you bring more kindness, more honesty, more presence to the way you sit at the table in whatever that looks like right now? I want you to meditate on that for a little bit. When we come back, we are going to go into our eye of pause for this episode. Be back in just a second. Welcome back, resilient ones. We are going to go into our eye of pause for this episode. So, if it is safe for you to do so, go ahead, get yourself comfortable. If you're driving or moving, you can listen now and come back to this later when you can close your eyes. I want you to gently place your feet on the floor if you can. Let your hands rest so that you feel supported. It could be on your thighs, it could be in your lap, it could even be gently on your stomach or on your heart. And I want you to take a slow breath in through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Let's do 2 more like that. In through your nose, exhale through your mouth. Again, in through your nose, exhale through your mouth. Now, if it feels okay and safe to do so, close your eyes or soften your gaze. And I want you to bring to mind a meal from your life where you truly felt nourished. It does not have to be perfect. It's just a moment where you felt a little more seen, a little more held, or simply at peace. Maybe you were a child. Maybe it was that one Thanksgiving where everyone got along for once. Maybe it was a late night meal and you were with a friend who made you laugh when you thought you had forgotten how to. Maybe it was a simple bowl of soup that you ate after having a long day, but it felt like your body saying, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Now take that memory and let it come into focus. What I want you to notice in the memory, where are you sitting? Who, if anyone, is there with you? What does that food smell like? How does your body feel in that moment? Now take a breath in and take a breath out. Now sit with that memory, and I want you to notice what your body feels like right now. Is there a softening in your shoulders? Does your jaw unclench a little bit? Do you feel warmth or maybe a lump in your throat? Whatever is there, let it be there. We're not fixing it, we are giving witness to it. Now gently ask yourself the following. What is one small way I can move closer to this feeling of nourishment in my current life? It may be that you decide that you're going to eat one meal a week without your phone. It may be taking deep breaths before you pick up your fork. It may be choosing not to make a negative comment about your own body or someone else's when you're at the table. It could be adding a simple blessing before you eat, even if it is just for you and your plate. Now let's take another breath in and breathe out. And now silently or out loud, you can repeat after me if this feels true for you. I deserve to be nourished. I deserve to be welcomed at the table. I am allowed to create new stories around food, family, and my body. And even if it doesn't feel true for you now, affirming it might make this something true for you going forward. So take one more breath in and out. And when you are ready, gently open your eyes, return your gaze to normal, sit in this space, and we will be back in just a second. Welcome back. We are going to go ahead and close out our show for today. And so, as we close out, I want you to hold this one image in mind. You at a table, whether it's big or it's small, it could be crowded, it could be quiet. You are choosing to bring a little bit more gentleness, a little bit more honesty, and a little more respect for your own body and your own story. This is the generational healing that we have been talking about. It may not look dramatic from the outside, and that's okay. Nobody is cueing the music to the movie soundtrack. No one may necessarily see or hear what is happening for you, but in your nervous system, in your children's nervous system, in your community, these small shifts actually matter. So this week, I would definitely love to hear from you. I would love to hear what is one memory from your childhood table that still lives in your body, and what is one new ritual that you want to try at your table now. So you can share your reflections with me on my Substack, in the comments under this week's IOA reflection and video. You can also continue to have conversation with me verbally, because now I have a SpeakPipe account where you can leave your messages, voicemails for me in any way that you would like to let me know what is going on. And so I would love, love, love to hear your actual voices, and with your permission, share some of the messages and the reflections that you have used or left for future episodes. So I want you to remember the way in which you can get this information and make sure you stay connected. Definitely want to make sure that you are liking and subscribing to the podcast. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and also other places where you get your podcasts. I want you to make sure that you're liking it, you're rating it, you're subscribing it. This is really, really important for what we are trying to do. I also want to make sure that if you haven't already, that you have the book. That is our blueprint. This is Rooted in Resilience. It is the book that we use. That is the blueprint for this particular podcast and all the things that we do. And so it really is a manual that you will want to have for your life. You can find it online on my website, which is malikambrown.com/store/p/rooted in resilience. And you get your copy sent to wherever you are located in the United States. I want you to understand that it is always an honor for me to be able to sit in front of you and to be able to give this information to you and be a catalyst and a resource and tool on your healing. So as you go into the rest of your day, my prayer is that you will know several things. You will know that you're not greedy for wanting to be nourished, that you're not difficult for wanting peace at the table that you sit at, that you are not asking for too much when you ask to be seen as a whole person. You deserve space, even if it starts with just you and a plate, where your body, your story, your spirit is welcome. You deserve that. So until next time, take a breath, take your time, and remember that we are healing loudly and we are living softly, because healing is not a performance. It is a way of life. Thank you. And until next episode, have a great rest of your day.